The great meeting hall stretched out like a metal ocean. Thousands of seats filled the curved walls, rising up and up until they disappeared into shadows. Each seat held a different kind of alien being. Some had scales that caught the light. Others floated in clear tanks filled with strange gas. A few looked almost like humans, but with too many eyes or arms that bent the wrong way. Elena Vasquez sat in the human section, which felt very small compared to all the others. She wore a simple black suit and kept her face calm, even though her heart was beating fast. Around her, the other human diplomats shifted in their chairs. They all knew this meeting would not go well. At the center of the hall, a huge crystal being rose from a platform that glowed with soft blue light. This was Speaker Valtheris, older than most stars and harder than diamond. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once, translated into every language in the hall. "We gather today because of a problem," the speaker said. "One species refuses to follow the rules that keep peace in our galaxy. One species says no when others say yes. One species breaks the laws that protect all of us." Elena knew they were talking about humans. They were always talking about humans lately. A tall, thin alien with silver skin stood up. This was Ambassador Zeth Kalar from the Hegemony, one of the most powerful groups in the Council. His people had been space travelers for millions of years. They thought they knew everything about how civilizations should work. Speaker Valtheras speaks the truth, Zeth Kalar said. His voice was smooth like oil, but cold like space. The humans have broken our laws 3 times in the last year. They built colonies in spaces that belong to other species. They refuse to let our ships check their military vessels. And worst of all, they walk away from peace talks instead of finding solutions. Murmurs filled the hall. Elena heard the word primitive in several alien languages. She heard dangerous and uncontrolled too. The speaker's crystal body rang like a bell for silence. "Show us the proof." A massive screen appeared in the air above them. It showed human ships moving through space. Then it showed new human cities on planets that the Council said humans should not have. The screen showed human warships turning away Council inspection teams. Finally, it showed human diplomats leaving meeting rooms while talks were still happening. "These are not the actions of a civilized species," Zeth Kalar continued. "We have tried to be patient. We have offered the humans many chances to learn our ways, but they refuse every offer. They say our rules do not apply to them. They act like they are better than the rest of us." Elena almost laughed. Better than the rest of them? The Council species had technology humans could barely understand. They had cities that floated in space and could move between stars in days instead of months. They had weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop suns. Humans were babies compared to most of the species in this hall, but that was exactly the problem, Elena thought. The Council treated humans like children who needed to be taught how to behave. They made rules for humans without asking what humans wanted. They told humans where they could live and how they could defend themselves. They expected humans to be grateful for the chance to follow orders. Another alien stood up. This one looked like a giant insect with rainbow wings. "Perhaps the humans do not understand," it said in a voice like buzzing bees. "Perhaps they need more time to learn civilized behavior." "They have had 50 years, Zeth Kalar replied. 50 years since first contact. Other species learned to follow Council law in half that time. The humans are either too stupid to learn or too proud to obey." Elena felt her jaw tighten. Around her, she could feel the other human diplomats getting angry too, but they all stayed quiet. This was her job, not theirs. The speaker raised one crystal arm. "The Council has decided. We offer the humans one final choice. submit to full integration protocols, or face complete isolation from galactic society. The hall went silent. Full integration protocols meant humans would have to follow every council law. Human colonies would be watched by council observers. Human ships would need council permits to travel. Human governments would have to get council approval for major decisions. It meant giving up human independence completely. Complete isolation. Meant no trade with any council species. No access to council space routes. No communication with the galactic network. It meant humans would be cut off from the rest of the galaxy like they had been before first contact. Elena looked around the AC hall at thousands of alien faces. Some looked smug, like they were sure humans would cave in. Others looked worried, like they thought isolation might be too harsh. A few looked curious, like they wondered what humans would actually do. Ambassador Vasquez, the speaker said, "You speak for humanity. What is your answer?" Elena stood up slowly. The hall was so quiet she could hear her own breathing. She thought about everything that had led to this moment. 50 years of humans trying to fit into a galactic civilization that saw them as newcomers who should know their place. 50 years of compromises that always seemed to favor the older, more powerful species. 50 years of being told that human ways were wrong and council ways were right. She thought about the human colonies that were thriving on worlds that council had written off as worthless. She thought about human scientists making discoveries that council experts said were impossible. She thought about human engineers building ships with new designs that worked better than anything the council had seen before. Maybe being cut off from the galaxy would not be the punishment the council thought it was. Elena looked directly at the crystal speaker. Humanity's answer is no. The word echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Aliens gasped and chattered in dozens of languages. Some stood up in their seats. Others made sounds of shock or anger. No? The speaker's voice carried disbelief. You refuse both options? We refuse to be given only two bad choices, Elena said clearly. We refuse to give up our freedom or accept exile as punishment for being ourselves. We refuse to let this council decide how humans should live. She started walking toward the exit. Her fellow diplomats followed behind her. If you leave this hall, Zethkalar called after her, there will be no more chances to negotiate. The council will act without human input. Elena stopped at the doorway and turned back. She looked at the thousands of aliens staring at her with confusion and anger. These beings had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. They had never met a species that simply refused to play their game. Then act, she said. Humanity will do the same. She walked out of the hall. The door closed behind the human delegation. With a soft hiss, inside, the aliens sat in stunned silence. In all the long history of the Galactic Council, no species had ever just said no and walked away. They had no idea what to do next, but they would figure something out. They always did. The Council had ways of dealing with difficult species. They would soon learn that humans had ways of dealing with difficult situations too. 3 days after the humans walked out, the Council voted. 847 species raised their hands, claws, tentacles, or whatever they used to say yes. The decision was clear. Humanity would face complete isolation from Galactic. Civilization. Ambassador Zethkalar smiled as he watched the vote counters announce the results. His silver skin gleamed under the hall's lights. The humans will learn, he told his aide, a smaller version of himself with nervous energy. When their economy crashes and their people start starving, they will come crawling back to beg for mercy. The council moved quickly to put their plan into action. Within hours, every human trade ship in council space received the same message. Leave immediately and do not return. Human merchants who had been doing business with alien worlds for decades suddenly found their contracts canceled and their goods. Refused. The hyperspace routes that connected different parts of the galaxy were controlled by ancient alien technology. The Council simply removed human ships from the access lists. Any vessel trying to use the fast travel lanes would be turned away or destroyed if they refused to leave. Communication networks that spanned thousands of light years began blocking all signals from human space. Messages that had once flowed freely between human colonies and alien worlds simply stopped working. It was like someone had cut all the telephone lines at once. Captain Sarah Chun was commanding a human freighter called the New Horizon when the isolation began. She had been trading with the Zephyrian colonies for 5 years, carrying rare minerals that humans mined better than anyone else. The Zephyrians were peaceful plant-like beings who had always been fair in their deals. When Sarah arrived at the Zephyrian trade station, the docking controller's voice sounded sad through her ship's speakers. "I am sorry, Captain Chun, but we cannot allow you to dock. The Council has forbidden all contact with human vessels." "What about our contract?" Sarah asked. Her cargo hold was full of titanium crystals that the Zephyrians needed for their technology. "We've been trading partners for years. The contract is void. Please leave our space immediately, or we will be forced to call for Council enforcement." Ships. Sarah stared at her communication screen in disbelief. She had friends among the Zephyrians. They had shared meals and stories. Now they were treating her like an enemy just because some council politicians had voted. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human diplomats were escorted out of alien embassies. Human students at galactic universities were told to pack their things and go home. Human tourists found themselves stranded as alien transportation companies refused to carry them. The isolation was complete and immediate. Almost overnight, humanity went from being part of galactic civilization to being completely cut off from it. Back on Earth, President Martinez called an emergency meeting of the Global Council. Leaders from every human world gathered in the Great Assembly Hall in Geneva. The room buzzed with worried voices speaking dozens of human languages. "The reports are coming in from all our outer colonies," said Admiral Torres, head of the Human Space Force. "Every trade route is blocked. Every communication channel is dead, or completely cut off. How long can we survive like this?" asked Director Kim from the Mars Industrial Complex. "Half our technology depends on materials we trade for with alien species." President Martinez stood at the podium, looking tired but determined. "We survived for thousands of years before we met any aliens. We'll survive now. But our colonies need supplies," protested Governor Walsh from the Centauri system. "Without alien medical technology, people will die." "Then we'll have to make our own medical technology," Martinez replied. "We'll have to make everything ourselves, just like our ancestors did." Dr. Elizabeth Stone, Earth's top scientist, raised her hand. "Actually, Mr. President, this might not be as bad as everyone thinks. We've been so busy trying to fit into galactic civilization that we stopped developing our own technologies. Maybe isolation will force us to be creative again." Some people in the room looked at her like she was crazy. Others nodded thoughtfully. Meanwhile, in council space, the aliens waited for humanity to collapse. Zith Kalar had his people prepare reports on human economic activity. He expected to see trade dropping, industrial production falling, and desperate messages begging for the isolation to end. The first reports confused him. Human trade had indeed stopped with alien worlds, but trade between human colonies was increasing. Ships were moving constantly between Earth, Mars, the Centauri colonies, and dozens of other human settlements. "They're probably just moving their stored supplies around," Seth Kalar told his aide. "When those run out, he'll have nothing left." Months passed. The expected collapse did not happen. Long-range sensors showed human colonies were not only surviving, but growing. New construction was happening on every human world. Industrial output was actually increasing. A year went by, and 2 years. Zeth Kalar's confidence began to crack. How could an isolated species be thriving? It went against everything the Council knew about galactic economics and technology. "Send a scout ship," he ordered. "I want to know what's really happening in human space." The scout ship was a small, fast vessel designed to slip into enemy territory without being detected. It crossed into human space near the edge of the Centauri system and immediately began taking readings. What it found made no sense. The Centauri colonies had grown by 30% since the isolation began. New orbital stations were under construction. Mining operations had expanded to asteroids that had been ignored before. Most shocking of all, the humans seemed to be developing new technologies. The scout ship's captain, a cautious alien named Victor, watched human vessels moving through space with designs he had never seen before. These ships were sleeker and faster than the old human designs. They moved in ways that suggested new propulsion systems. "How is this possible?" Victor whispered to his crew. "They have no access to Council technology databases. They can't trade for advanced materials. Where are they getting these innovations?" His science officer, a being with multiple eyes that could see across different spectrums, studied the readings carefully. "Captain, I think they're developing everything themselves. These aren't copies of Council technology. These are completely new designs." Victor felt a chill run through his scaled body. The Council had always assumed that progress required the shared knowledge of many species. No single species could advance quickly on its own. It was supposed to be impossible, but humans seemed to be proving that assumption wrong. The scout ship continued its surveillance for several more weeks. Every day brought new surprises. Human scientists were making breakthroughs in energy production, material science, and space travel. Human engineers were building things that Council experts would have said could not work. When Vector returned to Council space with his report, Zeth Kalar read it 3 times before he could believe it. "They're not collapsing," he said finally. "They're advancing." His aide shuffled nervously. "Should we extend the isolation? Make it even stricter?" Zeth Kalar stared out his office window at the great space station where the Council met. For millions of years, this had been the center of galactic civilization. Every important decision was made here. Every species that mattered had representatives here, except for humans, who seemed to be doing just fine without them. "Continue the isolation," he said quietly. "Maybe they'll still collapse. Maybe this is just temporary." But deep in his heart, Zeth Kalar was beginning to suspect the Council had made a terrible mistake. They had tried to punish humanity by cutting them off from galactic civilization. Instead, they might have set humanity free. 5 years after the Great Isolation began, something happened that no one expected. The humans disappeared. It started with the outer colonies. Long-range sensors that the Council used to watch human space began showing strange readings. The mining stations around Proxima Centauri went quiet. The agricultural colonies on Kepler 442b stopped broadcasting their daily status reports. One by one, human settlements simply went dark. At first, the Council observers thought it might be equipment failure. Space was dangerous, and colonies sometimes lost power or communication systems. But when patrol ships were sent to investigate, they found something that made no sense. The colonies were empty. Captain Tisara of the Council patrol ship Vigilant Harmony was the first to land on an abandoned human world. She was a veteran officer from the Altarian Republic, a species known for their careful attention to detail and logical thinking. She had seen many strange things in her 40 years of service, but nothing like this. The human colony on New Geneva should have held 50,000 people. The orbital platforms around the planet could have supported another 20,000. When Tessara's ship arrived, her sensors showed zero life signs. "Take us down to the main settlement," she ordered. Her crew, "I want to see this with my own eyes." The shuttle landed in what had been the central plaza of New Geneva City. Tessara stepped out wearing full environmental gear, though her sensors said the air was still breathable. Her team followed behind her, weapons ready for anything. The city was perfect. Buildings stood exactly as they should. Streets were clean and well-maintained. Vehicles sat parked in neat rows. Gardens still bloomed with earth flowers that the colonists had brought with them. Everything looked normal, except for one crucial detail. There were no people anywhere. "Sir," called her security chief, a massive insectoid being named Clicked H, "you need to see this." He led her to what had been the colony's spaceport. The landing pads were empty, but they showed clear signs of recent use. Burn marks from ship. Engines were still fresh. Cargo containers sat neatly stacked, as if someone had been in the middle of loading them when they stopped. Tessara examined the containers. They held personal belongings, clothes, photos, small treasures that people keep to remember home. It looked like the colonists had been preparing to leave, but in an organized way, not like they were running from danger. "Captain," her science officer reported, "I'm reading power signatures in the residential areas. The buildings still have electricity. Food preservation systems are still running, but the houses are empty." They searched for hours. Every building, every room, every storage area. They found beds that looked like they had been slept in recently. They found meals half finished on tables. They found children's toys scattered on floors. But they found no people, living or dead. Even stranger, they found no signs of struggle. No weapons fired, no doors broken down, no evidence of fighting or panic. It was as if 50,000 humans had simply decided to leave all at once, taking only their most precious possessions. Similar reports came in from every human world the Council checked. The great shipyards of Titan were empty but intact. The research stations in the Vega system had been abandoned but carefully shut down. The massive orbital cities around Jupiter showed signs of organized evacuation rather than disaster. Back at Council headquarters, emergency meetings were called every day. The great meeting hall buzzed with confused and worried voices. Representatives from hundreds of species tried to make sense of what they were seeing. "An entire spacefaring civilization does not just disappear," declared Speaker Vel Thuros. The ancient crystal being's voice rang with frustration. "Populations in the billions cannot simply vanish without a trace." Ambassador Zeth Galar paced back and forth on his platform. His silver skin had lost its usual shine. Something must have happened to them. Disease, perhaps, or natural disaster. Or maybe some enemy we don't know about attacked them. But that theory had problems too. Disease would leave bodies. Natural disasters would leave destruction. Enemy attacks would leave evidence of fighting. The human world showed none of these things. Catheta of the Symbiosis, a wise old being whose species had lived through any galactic crisis, raised a tentacle for attention. "Perhaps we should consider another possibility," she said in her thoughtful way. "Perhaps the humans left voluntarily." The hall erupted in arguing voices. Zeth Galar's voice cut through the noise. "Impossible. Where would they go? How would they move entire populations without anyone seeing them? The energy requirements alone would be beyond their technology." Catheta remained calm. "We have assumed many things about human capabilities that turned out to be wrong. 5 years ago, we thought isolation would destroy them. Instead, they prospered. Maybe we are wrong about their transportation abilities too." Dr. Nexus, the chief, science advisor to the Council, accessed his databanks. His robotic form hummed with processing power as he analyzed every report from human space. The evidence suggests coordinated evacuation over a period of approximately 6 months. The most recent colonies went dark only 3 weeks ago. This was not a sudden event. But coordinated by whom? Asked Speaker Val Thoreaus. And how did we not detect massive ship movements? Moving billions of people would require thousands of large vessels. Maybe they built new ships we couldn't detect, suggested Ambassador Yithran of the Confederation. They were developing new technologies during the isolation. Or maybe, Hafeta said quietly, they found a way to travel that we don't understand. The Council spent weeks investigating. They sent their best ships to search human space thoroughly. They found exactly what the first patrols had reported: empty but undamaged colonies, clear signs of organized evacuation, and no clues about where the humans had gone. The mystery deepened when investigators found something odd in the abandoned human cities. In public squares and government buildings, they discovered small devices that had been left behind deliberately. The devices were simple message recorders, designed to activate when aliens came close. The first message was found in the ruins of a United Nations building on Earth. When Ambassador Zethkalar's team triggered it, a holographic image appeared. It showed Elena Vasquez, the human diplomat who had walked out of the council chambers 5 years earlier. She looked older now, with gray streaks in her hair, but her eyes were calm and confident. If you are watching this, her image said, then you have discovered that humanity has left this galaxy. This was not a decision made in fear or anger. It was a choice made with hope and determination. The hologram continued. For 5 years, you tried to punish us by cutting us off from your civilization. You thought isolation would make us weak and desperate. You were wrong. Isolation gave us something much more valuable than your trade routes or technology databases. It gave us the freedom to discover what we could become. Zethkalar stared at the recording in disbelief. Around him, his investigation team murmured, in their various languages. You will wonder how we achieved this, Elena's image went on. How we moved billions of people without your knowledge. How we developed transportation beyond your understanding. The answer is simple. While you spent millennia perfecting the technologies you already had, we spent 5 years imagining technologies you thought were impossible. The hologram smiled, and for a moment, Elena looked like the same determined diplomat who had faced down the entire council. We found a way to travel between galaxies. We found new homes among the stars you never thought to explore. We found civilizations that welcomed us as partners rather than demanding we serve as subjects. The message ended with words that would haunt the council for years to come. You wanted us gone. We obliged, but remember this, you did not drive us away. You set us free. The hologram faded, leaving Zethkalar and his team standing in an empty building on an empty world, staring at the space where humanity's final message had been. Across the galaxy, similar messages were found on every abandoned human world. Each one contained the same basic information, but with personal touches that made it clear this had been planned for years. The Council faced a truth that challenged everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization. Humanity had not just survived isolation, they had used it to transcend the limitations that bound every other species. And now they were gone, leaving behind only empty worlds and the unsettling knowledge that the galaxy had just become a much smaller place. The Joint Council expedition to investigate the human disappearance was the largest scientific mission in galactic history. 300 ships from 50 different species came together at the edge of what had once been human space. They brought the galaxy's best scientists, engineers, and archaeologists. If there were answers to be found, this expedition would find them. Admiral Korthan of the Drakmari Imperial Fleet commanded the expedition. His people were known as the greatest explorers in the galaxy, having mapped more star systems than any other species. If anyone could solve the mystery of humanity's disappearance, it would be him. Begin systematic exploration of all former human territories, he ordered from the bridge of his flagship, the Starseeker. I want every planet, every space station, every asteroid mining platform searched completely. Look for anything we might have missed. The expedition split into smaller task forces. Each group took responsibility for a different part of human space. They searched for weeks, finding the same things earlier patrols had discovered: empty colonies, abandoned cities, and no trace of where billions of humans could have gone. Dr. Yalith of the Academic Alliance led the science team investigating Earth itself. Her species, the Mentari, were naturally curious beings who loved solving puzzles. She had studied the development of hundreds of civilizations and thought she understood how societies worked. But humanity continued to surprise her. The evacuation was incredibly organized, she reported to Admiral Corthan. They took personal belongings, but left all infrastructure intact. They shut down power systems properly and sealed buildings against weather damage. This was not the work of people running away in panic. How long do you estimate the evacuation took? The Admiral asked. Based on the evidence, at least 6 months for the outer colonies, possibly a full year for Earth itself. Moving this many people would have required careful planning and enormous resources. What puzzled Dr. Yalith most was what the humans had chosen to take with them. Food supplies were left behind, but recipe books were gone. Expensive artwork remained, but family photos had been carefully removed. Valuable metals stayed in storage, but libraries had been completely emptied. They took knowledge and memories, she told her research team. They left behind everything that could be replaced. Meanwhile, the archaeological team led by Professor Zinkara was making disturbing discoveries in the deep archives beneath major human cities. The Zinkara were living computers, beings who could process information faster than any organic mind. They specialized in finding patterns that others missed. In the basement of the Human Research Institute on Mars, Professor Zinkara found files that had been deliberately left behind. Unlike the personal belongings that were taken, these research documents seemed to be intended for the Council to discover. The files contained humanity's scientific progress during the 5 years of isolation. What Professor Zinkara read made his electronic mind spark with disbelief. Humans had been studying something called dimensional mathematics, theories about space and time that most Council scientists considered pure fantasy. They had built experimental devices to test ideas about folding spacetime itself. Most shocking of all, they had apparently succeeded. Admiral, Professor Zinkara transmitted to the Starseeker, you need to see these research files. The humans were working on transportation technology that shouldn't be possible. Admiral Cordan reviewed the files with growing amazement. The math was beyond anything in Council databases. The engineering diagrams showed machines that violated known laws of physics. Yet the test results suggested these impossible devices actually worked. How could they develop this so quickly? He wondered aloud. Even our most advanced species would need centuries to make such breakthroughs. His science advisor, a being whose species had spent millions of years studying the universe, offered a disturbing possibility. Perhaps they were not developing it during the isolation, Admiral. Perhaps they were developing it before the isolation, in secret. That thought led the expedition to focus on humanity's earliest space exploration sites. If humans had been hiding advanced research, it would likely be in their most remote and secure facilities. The breakthrough came when Dr. Yalith's team investigated a research station in the Kuiper Belt beyond Pluto. The station had been abandoned, like all human facilities. But it contained something the earlier patrols had missed, a message crystal hidden in what appeared to be a maintenance closet. Unlike the public messages found in major cities, This crystal was clearly meant for serious scientific study. When activated, it projected not just Elena Vasquez, but what appeared to be a virtual tour of humanity's greatest achievement. The recording began in what looked like a massive underground facility carved into an asteroid. Elena stood in front of a machine that hurt to look at directly. Its shape seemed to twist and bend in ways that made no sense to eyes evolved in normal space. "If you are watching this," Elena said, "then you have finally found one of our research sites. This is the Prometheus Project, humanity's attempt to find a way past the barriers that limit galactic civilization." The virtual tour continued, showing vast chambers filled with impossible machinery. Human scientists worked alongside devices that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially somewhere else. A technology was clearly far beyond anything the Council had ever imagined, while your species spent millions of years perfecting what you already knew, Elena explained. "We spent decades asking what might be possible if we threw out all the old rules." The recording showed test flights of vessels that moved through space by folding it around themselves. It showed experiments with gates that opened onto distant parts of the universe. Most incredibly, it showed successful contact with civilizations from other galaxies entirely. "We are not the first species to discover intergalactic travel," Elena continued. "There are others out there, civilizations that transcended their home galaxies long ago. They have been waiting for new species to join them, but they only contact those who prove they can think beyond conventional limitations." Dr. Yalith paused the recording, her mind reeling. "Admiral, if this is true, then humanity didn't just disappear, they graduated." The recording continued with Elena, showing brief glimpses of the civilizations humanity had encountered. Beings of pure energy, who had learned to exist without physical form. Machine intelligences that spanned multiple dimensions. Organic species that had merged with their technology to become something entirely new. These civilizations have been watching the Milky Way for millions of years, Elena explained. They see species rise and fall. They see empires that last for eons and others that burn out in mere millennia. They have learned that only certain types of civilizations are ready for the next stage of existence. The image changed to show what appeared to be a vast meeting hall, but not like anything in council space. This hall existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, with beings that defied every assumption about what life could be. "The requirement is simple," Elena said. "A species must prove it can grow beyond the need for external authority. It must show it can thrive without being told what to do by others. It must demonstrate that its curiosity and drive for freedom are stronger than its desire for comfort and security." Admiral Korth and felt his scales grow cold as he realized what Elena was saying. The Galactic Council represents everything these advanced civilizations have moved beyond, Elena continued. Ruled by committee, progress limited by the slowest member, innovation stifled by fear of change. They saw humanity struggling against these same limitations and decided to watch what we would do. The recording showed brief images of human colonies in other galaxies, cities that floated in space without visible support, beings that looked human but seemed to glow with inner light, children playing games with toys that defied physics. "When you isolated us, you gave us the greatest gift possible," Elena said with a smile that seemed sad and grateful at the same time. "You freed us from the obligation to try fitting into a system that was never going to accept us anyway. You forced us to find our own path." The final image showed thousands of massive vessels, unlike any design in Council records. They moved through space by methods that seemed to involve reality itself, bending to accommodate them. Each ship was the size of a small moon and appeared to carry entire cities worth of people. "Humanity is leaving this galaxy not as refugees, but as graduates," Elena concluded. We have been invited to join a community of species that spans multiple galaxies and dimensions. We go not with anger toward those we leave behind, but with hope for what we might become. The recording ended with coordinates, not to any location in the Milky Way, but to observation points where Council ships might be able to detect evidence of intergalactic travel. Dr. Yalith and Admiral Corthan spent days checking those coordinates. What they found changed their understanding of the universe forever. The space around those points showed traces of dimensional distortion, unlike anything in Council science. Energy readings suggested gates that opened onto distances so vast they couldn't be measured. Most disturbing of all, they found evidence that these gates had been used. The news of humanity's true departure hit the Galactic Council like a shockwave that never stopped spreading. Within days of Admiral Corthan's report reaching Council headquarters, the carefully maintained order that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years began to crack. It started with the younger species, those who had joined the Council within the last few thousand years. Representatives from the Orlan Federation were the first to speak up during an emergency session. If the humans could find a way beyond our galaxy, declared Ambassador Thrixala, then why are we still here? Why are we following rules made by species who clearly don't know as much as they claimed? Speaker Valthuros, the ancient crystal being who had led the Council for longer than most civilizations had existed, tried to maintain order. The humans were reckless. They took enormous risks that could have destroyed them. We follow careful, proven methods that ensure stability and peace. Stability? Thrixala's voice rose with anger. You call cutting off an entire species stable? You call forcing them into exile peaceful? Maybe the humans were right to reject our methods. Murmurs of agreement rippled through sections of the Great Hall where younger species sat. This was unprecedented. In the long history of the Council, member species might debate policy details, but they never questioned the fundamental system itself. Ambassador Zifkalar stood to address the growing unrest. His silver skin seemed duller than usual, and his voice lacked its former confidence. The humans are gone. Whether we agree with their methods or not, we must focus on maintaining civilization for those who remain. Maintaining what? Called out Ambassador Kestar of the Meridian Alliance. A system that drives away the most innovative species we've encountered? A civilization so rigid that it forces promising young cultures to choose between conformity and exile? The arguments continued for hours. Representatives who had never questioned Council authority were suddenly asking difficult questions. Why? Did the Council always choose the safest option? Why were new ideas treated with suspicion? Why did rules never change, even when they clearly weren't working? But the real crisis began 3 months later, when something started happening on the worlds. Humanity had left behind. It started on Earth. Dr. Yalith had left monitoring equipment in the abandoned human cities to study how empty settlements changed. Over time, the equipment was designed to detect everything from weather patterns to small animal movements. Instead, it detected technology activating. Admiral, Dr. Yalith transmitted to the Council patrol ship orbiting Earth. The device's humans, left behind, are turning themselves on. Admiral Corthan, who had been promoted to head of Council security after his successful investigation, immediately dispatched ships to investigate. What they found defied explanation. In the basement of the Human Research Institute on Mars, machines that had been cold and silent for months suddenly hummed with power. Display screens that had been dark flickered to life. Most disturbing of all, the experimental dimensional equipment that humanity had abandoned began operating on its own. The machines seemed to be running a program, reported the investigation team. But we cannot determine what the program is designed to do. Similar reports came in from every former human world. Abandoned research facilities were coming alive. Equipment that Council scientists couldn't understand was activating according to some predetermined schedule. The empty human cities began to glow with strange energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Yalith worked frantically to understand what was happening. Her analysis of the awakening technology revealed something that made her question everything she thought she knew about the universe. The equipment isn't just turning on, she reported to Admiral Corthan. It's evolving. The machines are improving, themselves using principles we cannot comprehend. Evolving how? The Admiral asked. They appear to be developing new capabilities based on contact with the dimensional network humanity discovered. It's as if the machines are learning from civilizations in other galaxies. Within weeks, the situation became even stranger. The self-improving human technology began producing new devices, machines that materialized out of thin air, using methods that violated every known law of physics. These new machines were clearly not built for human use. They were designed for species the Council had never seen. Then came the signals. Council communication networks, which had been carefully isolated from human space for years, suddenly began receiving transmissions from beyond the galactic rim. The messages were not from humanity, but they were clearly connected to human technology. The first message was in a language no Council species recognized, but the translation was surprisingly easy to understand. It seemed designed to be decoded by any spacefaring civilization. Greetings to the Galactic Council of the Milky Way, the message began. We are the Nexus Collective, representatives of the Andromeda Galaxy. We have been contacted by the human species who have joined our community of intergalactic civilizations. Admiral Corthan read the translation 3 times before its meaning sank in. Humanity had not just found a way to other galaxies. They had become ambassadors to them. The message continued. The humans have shared their experiences with your Council. We find your methods of governance ... interesting. We would like to meet representatives of your civilization to discuss the possibility of contact between our galaxies. However, the message went on, we have learned that your Council forced the humans into exile for refusing to submit to your authority. This troubles us. The advanced civilizations of the intergalactic community value independence and innovation above conformity. We are unsure if your species are ready for contact with us. The final part of the message was an offer that split the Council in half. We will establish a communication link through the dimensional network the humans created. Any species that wishes to learn about life beyond their home galaxy may request information. Any species that proves it can think beyond the limitations of local authority may be considered for intergalactic contact. But know this, the message concluded, we will not deal with civilizations that suppress the growth of their members. If you wish to join the larger community of galaxies, you must first prove you can govern without forcing your values on others. The Council chambers erupted in chaos. Half the representatives demanded immediate contact with these intergalactic civilizations. The other half insisted it was too dangerous, and probably a trap. Ambassador Zeth Kalar found himself leading the faction that wanted to reject all contact. We don't know anything about these beings, he argued. They could be trying to destroy our civilization from within. The humans might have been deceived or controlled. But his opposition was growing stronger every day. Led by K-Theta of the Symbiosis and supported by dozens of younger species, a new faction demanded that the Council fundamentally change how it operated. The humans proved that there are alternatives to our way of life, K-Theta argued. These intergalactic civilizations are offering us a chance to grow beyond our current limitations. How can we refuse without even trying to understand what they offer? The debate raged for months. Meanwhile, the dimensional network that humanity had left behind continued to evolve. New technologies appeared regularly in the abandoned human cities. Some of these devices seemed designed to help Council species understand advanced science. Others appeared to be tools for exploration and discovery. Most significantly, the network began allowing limited communication with human colonies in other galaxies. Council scientists who accessed the network received brief messages from their former colleagues. Dr. Sarah Chun, the freighter captain who had been turned away from Zephyrian space years earlier, sent a message to her old trading partners. The universe is so much larger than any of us imagined. There are thousands of galaxies out here, each with millions of civilizations. Most of them learned long ago that growth requires freedom. I hope you'll find the courage to join us someday. These messages had a profound effect on council species. Many began to question whether their ancient system of governance was truly the best way to organize galactic civilization. The final crisis came when 17 council species announced they were withdrawing from the central government. They wanted to explore the dimensional network and make contact with intergalactic civilizations on their own terms. "We will not leave the galaxy like the humans did," announced Ambassador Thrix Allah of the Orlan Federation. "But we will not be bound by a council that fears growth more than it values freedom." Speaker Val Thoros tried desperately to hold the council together. Without central authority, there will be chaos. Species will fight over resources. Peace will collapse. "Maybe," Thrixala replied. "Or maybe we'll discover that civilizations can cooperate without being forced to obey the same rules." The humans certainly seemed to think so. As the story drew to a close, the galaxy found itself divided into 3 factions. The traditional council species, led by Zeth Kalar, continued to insist that their old ways were best. The progressive species, led by K Theta, worked to reform the council from within. And the independent species, led by the Orlan Federation, began exploring the dimensional network on their own.